Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership and business from the inside out. And today is a take 2. I think it was approximately a year ago I met with April, the gorgeous April Van Der Kamp, and we recorded the pod. And yet the video went missing. So we've moved on. I've evolved a lot since my early pod days. So welcome to the show, April.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And a big shout out to all the listeners from locally and far. Hello, how is everyone going? Hope you're having a brilliant week. Again, just a big reminder, please do share, comment, tell us what you're loving about the Be Formless flow-driven conversations, because the more we know, the more we can continue to have these various conversations that you're vibing on. April, how has your week been?
Yeah, really good so far. Been enjoying the nice weather. It's a bit cold at the moment though. So I've got my rug here with me.
Have you? Oh, I love that. I love that we can have up the top, we can look so profesh. Yeah. And then we can have down the bottom, I'm in my active pants, which is nice and warm. So
me too.
Yeah, I know. It's cold but it's sunny here in Melbourne, which is awesome. And you're based in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And it's been quite the journey. When I first met you, I have seen such a evolution, transformation of you from the inside out. And I'm keen to talk about that and explore that a little bit. And obviously we did some advising together. You did one of my programs, and love to talk a little bit about that as well, because I noticed when I first met you to who you are today. And so we'll be able to both gauge how much we've both evolved since we last did the podcast. So let's get on into it. As I said, April Van Der Kamp, you are and I really want to applaud you for this. You're a PhD doctoral researcher. Previously, you were a PhD researcher candidate, and you have just recently submitted your thesis, which was, it's no
Nearly.
Pardon?
Nearly. I'm so close.
Well, you're so close. Sorry, you're so close. Huge effort. So big applause to you. So like I said, you are a PhD doctoral researcher. You're also a MedTech Co-Founder and researcher dedicated to turning scientific discovery into real-world healthcare solutions. Through your work developing antibacterial innovations and co-founding DFU Solutions Ltd, you're helping bridge the gap between breakthrough research and meaningful patient outcomes. And an important inflection point emerged when, April, you recognized that many promising discoveries never reach the people they're designed to help. That insight inspired you to focus not only on scientific excellence, also on the connection between research, industry, and commercialization. And I'll call out the commercialization bit because that was something that you and I worked on together as well. How do you connect that story? Because you see it quite often, and you did an accelerator program a while ago, and, quite often, lots of ideas get stuck in research and never see the light of day. And we need a lot of these ideas from research to come to life. And the commercialization is a really critical component. And that's also to ensure that the innovation creates that lasting impact. So today, April, you work at the intersection of science, entrepreneurship and healthcare, bringing researchers, clinicians and industry together to transform the ideas into solutions that improve lives and also ensure there's a return on investment. And so at the heart and soul of your work is a belief that innovation only fulfills its purpose when it moves beyond the laboratory and creates meaningful change for the people it was always intended to serve. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I started my PhD 2022. And it started with a conversation with my supervisor, Peter Speck, and we both lost a family member to diabetic foot ulcer infection. So we both had this real passion to develop a solution and then try and get it to clinic. And we investigated looking at these viruses that infect bacteria as a more green version of antibiotics, and putting that into a hydrogel to then treat the infection. So super easy for clinicians and then also for patients to use themselves. And that's what really inspired our journey to then go into the MedTech Actuator program, an accelerator program to try and commercialize the research coming out of my PhD. And that was really what that intersection of passion and getting into the research commercialization space, I was like, wow, this is a really exciting area where you're not just on the bench doing stuff, you're actually trying to get it to the patient, to clinicians to really revolutionize treatment. And during that journey, we sort of realized how difficult it is when you're trying to move your research to clinical application, and like how stuck it gets, because there's so much that we don't understand often as researchers that industry has, and then you're bridging this gap between, well, industry wants us to have all of these standards, but in research we were investigating, like going down these rabbit holes of exciting research, but then industry is like, oh, but you haven't done all this. So it was really quite a point of like, oh my God. But it was so exciting.
Yeah, totally. And when you say industry says you haven't done this, are they coming at it from a research angle? Like, is that what the challenge is, or are they coming at it from a commercialization channel?
Yeah, so they come from a regulatory standpoint. So they have a lot of like ISO certifications, which I think are industry standard of operation. So you need to meet those standards for it to be able to go to the patient. You also have to do the regulatory for TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, so meet their standards. And they're also thinking, how much value does this product bring to the patient? Like, is it very different to what's already on the market? You know, what value proposition does it have? And as a researcher who's like, oh, this was like really interesting and I'm super passionate about it, trying to then get industry to be interested in it when you've only really researched the experimental side is quite hard. So we were very focused experimentally, and then going into the MedTech Actuator program, we realized how much more we had to think about our strategy for commercialization, your intellectual property, like seeing that. There was even reimbursement, and I was like, oh, I haven't even thought about this before. So it really opens your mind to what you haven't considered as a researcher.
Do you think that universities missing a big component in the research? Like, when you think about your PhD and everything you're doing, do you think that it's time to shake it up and there needs to be a commercialization component to when you're at a university and doing your PhD? Because it just feels like it's potentially a big opportunity / also gap. Like, what is it within the education sector do you think needs to change to be able to give researchers like yourself who are in experimentation and in ideation? I mean, you were lucky to get into I shouldn't say lucky, you applied and it was great that you got into the MedTech accelerator. There must be a lot of researchers or people that are doing their PhDs that don't get that opportunity. And so they're almost potentially so talented and yet they're missing out on all this opportunity from a commercialization angle. Like, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think we as researchers sometimes like really focus in only on one aspect. We just go, this is my technology, it's amazing. But then we have in universities like technology transfer officers and commercialization officers, but we don't make use of them very often as students. We kind of go, oh, okay, it's there, but, you know, I'm just going to focus on my research here. And they're fully available for meetings and conversations, but I think we get a little bit it's a bit daunting for us to then reach out, or our supervisors haven't really thought about that aspect of it, or it's not an industry-based PhD. So we sort of just leave it and then go down the rabbit hole of our research, write our thesis, submit it. But then, you know, it had this really amazing impact, but we didn't translate it across because we weren't sure who to go and ask.
Yeah.
So I think they're definitely doing a lot more now. I find the universities are starting to have those discussions between the technology transfer office because they're starting to really see, like, we have some really fantastic research here, but it gets lost because we're not having conversations between departments. Like we get really isolated and don't have much of a conversation because we're College of Science and Engineering. We stay here. And then the arts department stays here and we don't really talk to each other. So they're starting to have bigger meetings together to bring everyone to be able to have discussion. Yeah, exactly. So there's more of a push now, but when I started, it was definitely a lot less and more separate.
And the other part for me that comes up is, and obviously something that we worked on together, was bringing your personal brand to life, and also like, how do you put yourself more out there? Like you talk around, like not everyone, researchers, like the scientist, in the white coat, in the laboratory, there's a lot of, probably no doubt, introverted researchers. I'd love to know the stats on that, potentially, who are doing their PhDs. And you talk around, I've always been weird bee. And I'm like, embrace the weirdness, April. Like, that's like, I love it. Like when we first started working together, you were like almost ashamed of that. And I'm like, no, you've got all this amazing qualities and quirks about you. And, when you talk to me through, like, even your interest in plants and all these different things, and I'm like, we need to embrace this and we need to bring this to life. And, being able to then know that you can put yourself in situations where you can have the conversations. And I think the MedTech Accelerator helped you do that. Tell us a little bit about that shift for you in terms of someone who was quite shy to what you've also been working on as part of, putting yourself more out there as well as part of this whole journey.
Yeah. So when we first met, I think we all want this idea of looking really professional and like we're in the box of professionalism. Like, here's me, don't let too much of yourself out, because you want everyone to, I guess, respect you upon meeting you and think that you look really professional. But in reality, it's like, that's not really you as a person. Like, there is so many facets to people in their personality that I'm not sure if it's specifically a researcher thing, but we like to sort of shut it all down and be like, this is me, professional, like, I do things logically and clinically and it's all good. But I did see there are lots of people that I met during my PhD when I was doing lab-based work, and they always let their personality shine through. Like, one girl absolutely loved pink, and she was pink everywhere, pink lab coat, pink hair, like absolutely stunning. And then another one dressed all in black all the time. Like, they let their personalities shine through. And to me, when I would speak to other people, they'd be like, oh, they're weird, they're weird. So then we sort of internalize, oh, don't let your personality out. Like, don't be weird. But in meeting with you and then discussing stuff, I was like, what's wrong with being weird? Like, it's like your identity, your personality, every person's different. Like, you got to let it out and be you, because if you don't, you end up more than likely not liking yourself down the track because you're someone completely different to who you actually are on the inside. And people love authenticity. So why not be authentically you? Because, that's the best version of you, is the authenticity.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I totally agree. There's an interesting inflection point though, isn't there, in terms of the more authentic we are, the more it's hard to go back to conforming to how we're expected to be. And I know that, you're actively looking for roles in terms of, now that you're coming out of your thesis and, in medtech and commercialization. And some of the conversations and we were working through at the time was like how you approach some of these corporates, if you like, or businesses, because there's this expectation of fit the old school job application, if you like. And I was encouraging you to still be able to tell your story, because you have a great story to tell. And I'm interested to see how that's been progressing. And my other question is, have you had moments where you wavered and gone, oh, I have to just put that to the side and try and conform, and felt like it's jarring with who I am now?
Yeah, so at the moment with applications, I did notice the big difference between the PDF version of my really beautiful CV actually getting chucked out during the screening processes. So I think they call it the ATS system, can't apparently handle PDFs and all the nice, like it's a very nice CV, I will say. So I pivoted to sending that one if I'm emailing someone, so then they get the really nice version. But if I'm applying via like LinkedIn, Seek, or LinkedIn, I'll use a Word document format. So it still is me, but it's just more, I guess, a sort of plain version so that the ATS system doesn't go, yeah, see you later, can't read you. And then my nice CV, my frilly CV, which looks really nice. And as we worked on, I get sent as a formal one via email. So then at least, people can see it. They can see my story instead of it being lost within the system. So that's where I sort of pivoted because I recognized, I was like, not getting past many of these applications.
Really? It's really interesting, isn't it? Because these systems feel so old world. And you're an up and coming next gen leader who has so much to offer from not just from the smarts, but personality, thinking differently, solving really complex problems, coming up with ideas, especially in health and health tech, etc. What do you think needs to change, April? Like, what's your perspective on all of this? Do you think that the systems as they stand discounting talent like yourself at times, and what do you really think needs to change for it to be more open and to allow more of the, let's just call it the weirdness, to come into these organizations that absolutely need someone to shake it up, if you like?
Yeah. So I find that connections, like meeting people in person or via, Teams, Zooms, Riverside, has probably been the better way to let your personality shine, because I I understand for larger corporates, the issue of, like, you've got 300 applications. What on earth are you going to do? You're going to have to like screen all of these things out. It's like way too many. But for people to really, I guess, get you as a person and see who you are, the connection in person has always been best. But even just starting over a Zoom or Teams meeting has been really great for them to see you as a real person. What needs to change is maybe having like a video. I see Johnson & Johnson does it quite often. They have like a video recording that you do if you get past the screening process. And then they will review your video when you do your sort of interview that way. So I think that's a really great way to show your personality and let it get through. But it also comes to the point of having to get through the screening part through your application. I would prefer a more video side interview process like that to then progress through in person or proper team Zoom sessions. But I think it is really hard to change it just for the sheer fact of how many people are applying for a singular job at one time. But networking's the best thing. Like, I find I went and met with Michelle Perugini on Monday in person to have a networking session and talk to her about, as someone coming out through their PhD, what would you do in your position? Who do you think I should connect with, talk with? Because I'm so passionate about commercialization and getting innovations out there. And those networking moments are probably the best way to be able to talk with someone, let them see what your passion is. I really love the networking in person. I know it's hard to be able to get to every single session, but that would be what I would recommend 100% for people to see you and your personality. You're not just a number or a resume. You're physically there wanting to talk, chat, experience.
Do you think that AI is hindering or helping this in terms of like in the last 12 months, especially in the past 6 months, there's just been this catapult, like AI is going 100 miles an hour sort of thing. Do you think that's helping or hindering applying for roles now? Do you think, where I'm going with this is that you talk about authenticity and embracing your weirdness and embracing yourself, and yet there's a lot of beigeness coming through at the moment, and it's just almost reading like, it's like, and it's like, how do you even know who I am? And I'm constantly prompting, when I go and prompt stuff, I'm always like, stop giving me AI slop. Do you think I guess that's the question, do you think it's getting sloppier, the recruitment interview process?
I think it's both. It's got pros and cons. It's definitely, the con is like the amount of people that it's just like, they talk about LinkedIn, how it's like, I caught a fish, and then, LinkedIn is like, I prepped all of this to be able to go and fish and successfully caught a fish. And I think AI can really jazz up and make a resume look really good. So it's like you're getting thousands of really great CVs coming through, when if you get down to bare basics, they're probably not as fancy as they come across as. And you're getting lost in the sea of some really great ones versus, some skills that have clearly been dressed up to be more impressive than what they are. But then the pros are rapid screening, like it's able to pick out keywords that it needs, like it benefits both you because, sometimes when you're trying to write something, it's like, oh, how do I write this sentence? Or how do I write this paragraph? It's 3,000 words. How do I condense this down? But you do lose your skill if you keep relying on it. Like, I know lots of people rely on it for writing, which it's okay if you're trying to learn a specific style of writing. So I'm learning a direct style of writing, so making sure everything's nice and direct and concise. And I used a lot of AI to help me understand what that prompting looked like. For example, I would use, a book and say, okay, so this text is 1,000 words. How would George Orwell write this, for instance? And then it was like, putting the subject first. And I was like, oh, that's like, of course. So it's really great for helping you understand how writing works. But then when people get it to write everything for them, it's like, it's no longer your work. Like this is clearly, you're not writing it yourself. So it's got the pros and cons of helping you understand literacy and writing, for instance, of, there's creative writing, direct writing, and understanding what are the differences between the two. Whilst for some people, they lose it because they'll use it completely for that reason of just write this and whatever. So I think it's pros and cons.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah.
Whilst it's like good for you to be like, oh, how would I write this? And then it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. Put the subject first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stop putting it all the way at the end of the sentence. Because that's my worst habit.
You're extremely ambitious, and I can imagine where you're going to be in, I don't know, 5 years' time as a leader in your field, and really bringing the two together in terms of idea from research into commercialization and where you go. What do you see as the biggest challenges for you at the moment in terms of knowing where you want to get to versus where you're currently at? What do you, and then what do you see as, given all the different networking conversations you're having, as well as doing your PhD, also being a co-founder of a business, what do you see as the requirements for the next gen of leaders coming into play?
I find it's a lot of experience at the moment. It's trying to, where I am now, I'm writing my thesis, but also being so mindful when writing to make sure that it's more translational so that at least I can show my thinking and reasoning of developing a product and what does it take to get it to the market. So instead of just writing a traditional one, it's more of a workflow of like, how do we commercialize this, to demonstrate my experience, because it's very hard, I find, gaining experience, especially entry-level jobs, because often they're like at least a minimum of a year of experience. And I was like, oh, that's really quite difficult to get. I think it's really important to do a lot of professional development, like not to box yourself in of just like, I just need to be this particular way, like being open to all opportunities. Because you never know, you go to one meeting, speak to people, and it opens your mind to a lot of different possibilities. So not shutting doors by going, oh, I don't need to go to this
totally.
networking session. I don't need to listen to what they're talking about. Because a lot of the industry sessions I've been to were really interesting to see of, being a little bit more assertive and combative with people with ideas and being like, don't let them just drink the Kool-Aid. Like, you need to ask, is it viable? Can you do that? Like, is this product going to get to the market? But I know a lot of us as PhD, doctoral researchers, we're a bit like, oh, I don't want to like question you on your idea there.
Yeah, because you talked to me about pre-show, we were talking about development and professional development, personal development, whatever you want to call it. I mean, for me, it's coming right back to how do you lead, operate from the inside out. So for me, it's like we were talking about trying to fit in. And I think that we need to be very cognizant and careful of that, because we do have this, issue somewhat at the moment where there is this, well, I just want to fit in. I'm especially in your situation, in terms of I want to get a role, I need to get a role. And so I'll do whatever it takes to fit into the mold. I think we've got to be really careful about that, because if we do that, we're not fulfilling our purpose. We're not fulfilling our mission. We're not fulfilling what's being asked of us and what our inside is looking for. And so it's a real fine line, isn't it? Because you're up against this system that is somewhat not conducive to the authentic you versus just we need you in this box.
Yeah. I find it's very hard, I think, when you're starting out as you don't feel like you're very big, like you matter in, the world of research. Like you're a tiny fish in a big pond. But you're more than that. Like you as yourself as a person are more than just, a small fish in a big pond. It's your identity, what you want to pursue. And I find what was really useful when I was trying to understand my trajectory and where I wanted to go, I did prompt a bit with AI of like, how can I get to like commercialization, development? Like, what do I need to do? What am I lacking in terms of skills? And then I found, okay, well, I'm lacking in terms of professional development. And I was like, oh, okay, yep, sure. And then it was like, oh, what networking events could I attend? And then using it as a prompt and productivity tool to support your learning. Like I found a lot of free training courses that I could do just to try and help with my experience and demonstrate, I'm passionate in this area. I want to learn. I find demonstrating that, and it is fine to use as a productivity tool. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
But I think we always get a bit scared of going, oh, I don't want to use that. It's cheating. But it's like, it's just helping find things that you may not have found yourself. Like I found TGA Learn, where you could learn a lot of different stuff about the process of regulation. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like lots of different avenues that you could go down for training as well, like doing auditing and stuff like that. Like it's very useful for those things. And if you're starting out, I think going, well, this is my passion area. How can I get there in the next, 5 years, for instance? And then it lays out some different roles that you can look into. Like I was like, oh, what about medical affairs? And then it's like, well, these are the experiences you need. And I was like, how do I get those experiences? And I found also networking is probably the best thing.
Is key, the connections, I agree. And also for like your mental health when you're, like I was going to ask you that, like on the days where you're just like, because it's a lot of the time it's not what you know, it's who you know, all the rejections you get at times from just that boxed in system and the way you're being how do you pick yourself back up? What do you do to bring yourself back to yourself?
What do? I do quite a bit of knitting. Like I like to sit there and like think and knit. I do also go back and look at my progression from where I was to where I am now, like all the amazing feedback I got from my supervisors with my work of being going back to my first ever draft, and it was, absolutely way too many words on there, 10,000 words, ridiculous. And then seeing my progression with their feedback and going, I have progressed so much from when I started to where I am now. It's a very direct way of writing. It's no longer, trying to put lots of fluffy words in of like possibly and may have been related to this potential thing. I think just seeing how far you've progressed is something
Well, it's those continuous finishing lines, isn't it? It's not having just the one big finishing line. I think it's really important. And you and I worked through this as well when we were working together. Just having those continuous finishing lines, what you're talking about here is continuous progression, because I've achieved that, and then you're on to the next thing. And I think that's super important when you're ambitious. You've got this ambition, and it's one foot in front of the other, isn't it? April, what would be one, I guess, tip or words of wisdom that you would give anyone that is currently in your position right now in terms of completing a thesis or completing something to do with where they're heading with their career? And also, I think I know what you're going to say, and also then applying for different roles. What would be your tip?
I guess my two biggest tips is if you're, completing your PhD, feedback is a good thing. Like it is daunting to receive a lot of feedback back, but it's accepting that feedback and not thinking that you're terrible at what you're doing. It's as we just discussed, it's your continuous improvement. You are improving your writing constantly. It's, one thing that looked good last week, you could improve even better today. It's continuous, and be a constant learner, like be willing to constantly learn and improve as you go, because that's been the biggest thing for me, is switching that mindset of, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. But no, not everything's going to be perfect. Each draft is going to have a new iteration, and it's going to look amazing at the end because you've put in the hard work and been working with your supervisors to progress it forward, and lean on them. Like you have to lean on your supervisors, and because they have such fantastic feedback. Like my Peter Speck has amazing feedback, and so does Belinda Martin, of like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So leaning on them and being a continuous learner, like taking on that feedback. And then in terms of applying for roles, it's going and networking, putting yourself out there. Don't be worried about being weird or having a bad impression. It's, the best thing you can do is go and talk to people and see their experiences. What do they think? What are their insights? And if you're not sure where to go in terms of networking events, quick chat onto AI of like what events are happening near me, and then going through links of, I think their AusCelerate now like has some really fantastic ones across nationally. So that's always good. And never be afraid to be authentically you. That's the biggest thing.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I will also shout out to you. You even started your own little LinkedIn, I shouldn't say little, but LinkedIn content series just around the trials and tribulations and all the, your journey and experience in terms of doing your PhD, and then that move into then, applying for roles, etc. And I encourage all the listeners out there to share your story, share it, share what's going on for you, because you just never know who you're going to help or who you're going to support. And watching you, April, it was one of my biggest joys of seeing you evolve in your growth in terms of putting yourself out there on social media, the confidence that you get from that in terms of just being your authentic self. And anything is possible when you just start to take a step forward and put yourself out there. So April, thank you so much for coming on today's show. I'm
Thank you for having me.
Pardon?
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And like I said, I know where you're headed, and I can't wait to hear and see you continue to flourish and make a real big change in the industry you're in. And watch out, world, is all I can say. So how do we find out more about you, April? How do we find out more about all your experiences and your journey as you continue on the journey?
Yeah, so I'm more active on LinkedIn. That's probably where you'll see all the excitement happening. So, yeah, that's probably my main area of, seeing what I'm doing. Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best. Once a month, I do post my LinkedIn series. And definitely your encouragement to start that. I was like, oh, no one's going to want to listen to me. And it's not about the, who's going to see it and the impressions. It's about, putting yourself out there, just, your opinions and thoughts. People might disagree, completely fine, but it's just sharing your thoughts and
Great. Be
experiences.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Did you knit that
Definitely.
jumper? Last question.
No, I did not.
Yeah.
I wish I'm stuck with scarves. That is my main form of knitting. So I'm knitting a blanket at the moment.
Oh,
So,
very cool. Very
yes.
cool. Oh gosh, you
Got
should
me
you should
squares.
start a little blog on knitting or something as well, in terms of the science and the how do you commercialize scarves as well. But April, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Love staying connected with you, and can't wait, like I said, to see you continue to shine bright. So thank you, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you so much. You too. I really appreciate having you on my side and networking with you. It's
Always.
always been so amazing.
Thanks, April. Take care.
Thank you.